All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Pennig. I am the Senior Director of Customer Support here at Recurly. And today's webinar is designed to talk about transitioning to Recurly. It's designed for merchants who either have an existing billing solution and are looking to start with Recurly, or for merchants who are really starting from scratch and just need sort of the intro basic 1, 2, 3 steps on how to go live. Before I start our webinar, I just want to give a few tool tips. We are using GoToMeeting for this webinar. There's a little question and answer box over on the right side of your screen. If any questions come up during the webinar, whether it's about what I'm talking about or anything else related to Recurly, go ahead and post a question. I'll check back in on it throughout the webinar, and at the end we'll also have a Q&A session. So let's talk about a little bit about Recurly. We have a real advantage over our competitors because this company has been born from people who understand billing problems. Our founder, Isaac Hall, had been working at all these different companies trying to integrate all these complex billing solutions and found everything just was too difficult and just too inappropriate for his needs. So he founded Recurly really out of that frustration and that need to make billing simple and elegant. And I in particular joined Recurly because I had gotten the chance to work with Isaac, and I was so convinced of his mission. And after struggling with some of the other billing products out there in my role as customer support, Recurly was like a breath of fresh air. So I hope you know that as you contact anyone at Recurly, you know that we know where you're at. We know how difficult billing can be. We're people who have done it all and seen it all, and we're truly excited about helping make it better for you. And that sort of passion is how we get some really great customers. We work with Dish Digital, Groupon, HubSpot, other companies such as Livestream or Dropcam. These are all companies I know on a first name basis. We are not a call center. We don't outsource our support. Like I said, we are truly a company that understands billing problems. And if you use Recurly, you're going to get to know me very, very well. All right. So again, Recurly was designed to make subscription billing simplified. We do that by making it easy to understand, easy to integrate, and easy to use. I'm going to go back to that slide for a second just to talk about a few things here. Anyone in your company should be able to use Recurly, from your tier 1 support agent to your CEO. It's super simple to just drop into Recurly and know exactly what you need to do and what you need to click on. One of my favorite examples is that in another billing provider I've been using, when I left to go to Recurly, I was documenting my steps for changing a subscription, and it was 42 steps. Inside of Recurly, it's about 3 clicks. So it's very easy to understand how to do things and easy to use. We also make it very easy to integrate. I'm going to talk a little bit about our integration options, but know that you can get up and running with Recurly in as little as 30 minutes. And yes, it's easy to use. Anyone in your company should be able to use this. While we do offer webinars and training sessions, you should be able to pick up our doc site or sign up and get added as a user to your Recurly site and run with it. So when you're looking to get started with Recurly, there are really 3 main things you need to consider. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Connecting your gateway and merchant account, the actual integration piece, and then if you have an existing user base, importing your customers. But we're going to talk about connecting gateways and merchant accounts first. And the reason why we put this first is because this can typically be the longest part of your integration. If you don't already have a merchant bank account, it can take 1 to 2 weeks to get sorted away there. So we always recommend starting here, and you can do all the other steps, while this is kicked off and the approvals are running. So Recurly works with a number of third-party gateways. We connect with everything from authorize.net to PayPal. So no matter what stage of your business, no matter what history you have with a gateway provider, we can connect with these gateways and help you continue that relationship. Now, if you don't already have a payment gateway, for merchants in the US, we offer the Recurly gateway. It's included for free. You can always add additional payment gateways. But as I noted, it does only support merchants located in the US who are collecting payments in USD. So if the Recurly gateway isn't for you, maybe you're looking at other solutions or you're outside of the US, there are a few things to consider. The first one being namely the speed of sign up. As I mentioned, it can take 1 to 2 weeks. Although there are some providers out there that have rush processes, they work with new merchants regularly and can get you up and running in about 24 hours. That, of course, does tie in with their fees. Typically, if they're taking on newer merchants, they want to collect higher fees to sort of balance out that risk. So with every payment gateway and every merchant account, the fees are going to be different because they do look at things like your average ticket size, your volume of transaction, your operating history, and then they provide you with a custom quote based on that. So if you're looking at different providers, definitely get a quote on those fees so you can compare, apples to apples with the Recurly fees. Another consideration is multi-currency support, whether or not they just support USD or you can mix in other currencies. Another thing I suggest doing is contacting customer support. Shoot them an email and see how long it takes them to get back. See if they send you a form letter. See if they do any follow-up. When you're working with billing, things are urgent. You're dealing with your customer's money and you want to make sure you're getting a helpful, rapid response. So I always recommend checking in with their customer support to see if their level of support fits your business need. Now, the last consideration is a little technical, but it's error fidelity. And this is really core to how Recurly works. When we send a transaction to a payment gateway, the payment gateway will respond back to Recurly and say, yep, it was approved, you got the money, send the customer their invoice, their receipt, all good to go. Where Recurly's beauty really comes in is on those declines. When the transaction decline happens, the payment gateway will respond back and tell us more about the decline. Some payment gateways only have about 5 error messages. They'll say things like, yeah, just declined, just basic decline. And we know, okay, all we know is that it was declined and we can try again in 3 days. But other gateways will say things like, this card has a temporary hold. And we know that temporary holds are usually cleared within 24 hours, so we retry every 24 hours then. They may also respond with, hard decline. This is an expired credit card. Don't try it again. So then Recurly knows not to retry the card, but to keep reaching out to your customer to get their updated billing information. So the reason why we do this is it saves you on merchant account fees. So we're not just attempting these transactions that, the gateway knows will fail. And we also know that we're trying it intelligently so that, since we have the credit card data, we can recapture as much revenue as possible for you. So, some gateways will have just a few error messages. Some gateways, like the Recurly gateway, has over 200 error messages. So we can get really specific and drive into exactly why a payment failed for your customer. But the important thing to consider is that because you're using Recurly, you're not locked into a payment gateway. We store the credit card data in our PCI compliant vault. We're PCI compliant level 1, which is the highest level of PCI compliance. We store the credit card data, which means with literally as simple as a click of a button inside of Recurly, you can switch your payment gateway to another processor. And to talk a little bit about why you might want to do that. Well, I mentioned that you can get up and running with some gateways like PayPal very quickly. If you're a new business, you don't have a lot of operating history, they might charge you a little bit more. So as your business grows and you have more operating history, more revenue, you can apply for either, another PayPal account or with another gateway and get better rates. You may also decide that you need international business and you want to start processing payments in euros. Maybe your gateway today doesn't support euros, so you can switch gateways or add a gateway that has that payment option. There's also something called multi-gateway routing. And this gets really, really fun when you have a really large business. You can send small payments to PayPal and get lower fees. You can be sending specific card types to one gateway, specific currencies to another. So you have a lot of flexibility as your business grows. You don't need to worry about, exporting your customer credit card data. Recurly will all handle it for you. All right, so at this point, you've hopefully either learned a little bit about payment gateways, you've gotten one, or you've started the process for applying for a merchant account, and you can focus on how you're going to integrate with Recurly. Now, there are 2 main integration methods, although there are others. We're going to focus on these 2 today: hosted payment pages and Recurly.js. Our hosted payment pages can get you up and running literally in 30 minutes if you already have a payment gateway. With a hosted payment page, you basically tell Recurly, this is the subscription plan, this is how much I want to charge, and this is how often I want to charge. Recurly will then generate a checkout form, and you can link your customers to that checkout form to process payment. There's no developer required. It's a great way to get up and running quickly. Now, we also offer Recurly.js, which is a checkout form we provide, but you can fully customize. So it lives on your website. The user keeps the same experience, the same look and feel. It's a really elegant solution and not that difficult. Again, with a good developer, maybe 1 to 2 business days. The important thing to mention that with the hosted payment pages is that you're not stuck with either of these integration methods. If you need to get up and running quickly, you can start with a hosted payment pages and work on building your Recurly.js integration and then move over in the future. So you can do a lot of things here. Now, this is an example of what a hosted payment page looks like. One of the downsides of hosted payment pages is that they aren't very customizable. They're designed to, not have any coding, get you up and running quickly. So it's really the basics. It has subscription checkout. It presents the type of cards you can accept, and you can customize things like adding coupons, adding quantities, limiting your billing information. You can add a logo and change your background color, but that's about it. So this supports a lot of our merchants' needs, but we also have merchants who want to do a lot more. So they look to Recurly.js. Now, this is Dropcam, one of Recurly's customers that you saw earlier in the slide. And what I love about this is you would have no idea that Recurly is behind all of this. They've used our Recurly.js forms, and they fully customized this to do a lot more. They've added things like one-time payments. They've added a coupon code box. They've added sales tax and shipping fees. But it still has some of the elegant parts of Recurly, like address information, credit card things. With both integrations, we'll do all sorts of inline validation, make sure that when payment fails, we present that error information to your customer so they can try again. So really, with Recurly.js, your options are limitless. You can do whatever you'd like. And then, of course, Recurly.js and the hosted payment pages are just designed to be very secure ways to collect your customers' credit card information. Once you have that inside of Recurly, you can use the API to issue one-time charges, upgrades, downgrades, all sorts of things. You only need to use one of these integration methods to very securely handle that initial collection of credit card data. All right, importing customers. This is one of my favorite topics and one of the things I work on the most at Recurly. If you have an existing user base, you'll want to get them all into Recurly. You'll want to have one system of record, and there are 2 ways you can go about it. If you have the customer credit card data, or if your payment gateway is willing to give you the credit card data, you can do the import yourself using the Recurly API. One thing to consider is that you do have a little bit more PCI compliance scope because you would be storing credit card locally on your servers, but once it's in Recurly, you can get rid of all of that and reduce your PCI scope. It does require some very technical, careful work because you want to make sure you're doing everything correctly and not billing the wrong people, and it can take a while. It's very, very careful work, I like to say, and if you're not able to do that, if you're not able to get the credit card data, if you don't have the developer resources, Recurly can manage your imports for you for a professional services fee. These typically can take anywhere from, I had one that went like clockwork and it took a week, to some that I've been going back and forth for about 6 months. That's definitely not the norm. But if you have an existing user base, start the conversation with me now, because there are any number of discussions to have with your payment gateway, with Recurly, and it never hurts to sort of start talking and start figuring out what sort of things you need to get into order. But in the most part, 2 weeks is about the norm from beginning to end. So that's really it. Those are the 3 things you need to do to get ready with Recurly. You need to make sure you have a payment gateway and merchant account. You need to decide how you're going to integrate with Recurly. And if you have a legacy user base, you want to kick off that conversation and have Recurly start importing them in for you. So now I'd like to open this up to some questions. I'm here to answer anything we covered here, or if you just have specific questions about how your business might work with Recurly, go ahead and use that Go to Meeting window on the right side of your screen and ask away. Okay, one of our customers asked, what can't the hosted payment pages do? It's a good question. Hosted payment pages really get tricky when you want to do things like custom prices. So with Recurly.js or with the hosted payment pages, it's sort of what you see is what you get. It's a $9.99 plan. That's what your customer is going to get charged. If you're doing something with Recurly.js, you can do things like submit custom pricing, you can lock in a currency, you can do all sorts of things that are kind of custom in the back end, where the hosted payment pages, it's really up to the customer to choose a currency if you have multiple currencies, select their subscription plan, and check out. It's just less flexible, but totally manages to meet most merchants' needs. So one of the questions here is, what do we have to do to stay compliant as a merchant that accepts credit cards? Well, one of the common misconceptions I hear in our support queue is, okay, Recurly, fill out my PCI compliant form because you're my billing provider. Recurly itself is PCI compliant, but as a business, you are also required to be PCI compliant. So anytime you're working with credit card data, your merchant bank account will require you to be PCI compliant. Now, when you're working with Recurly, since we are handling most of the credit card data, your scope is very, very reduced. In most cases, you can just fill out a self-assessment questionnaire, they call it a SAC, and you can just file that with your merchant bank account. If you go to our doc site, which I'll link to in just a moment, we have a specific question on there, a specific page on PCI compliance, and it talks about our different integration methods and which PCI SAC form you can fill out depending on your integration. It's really not difficult. All right, so there's a question here about covering the API and talking about moving monthly subscription plans to Recurly. If you want to go ahead and give me more details about what you're looking to do, I'd be happy to answer that in more detail. Sounds like it might be a question about existing user bases. So I'll say the first step is creating the accounts and putting their credit card information into Recurly. And then you can apply the subscriptions to their accounts. Now, sometimes when I'm working with merchants who want to migrate over to Recurly, they don't have their customer credit card data either. Usually, most cases, the payment gateway just won't release it. And typically what's very, very successful is to offer your customers a small coupon just to move over. Sending them an email saying something like, hey, we're moving over to a new billing provider for better management. Here's 10% off your next 6 months if you resubscribe. Another way I've seen it done is telling your customers that pricing is going up, but they can lock in their existing pricing if they migrate into Recurly. Both are really great motivators to get your customers to import themselves without you having to take on that task. Okay, another question here is about integrations. Recurly does integrate with 2 main providers. We have an integration with Salesforce. It's a one-way synchronization. So basically anything that happens inside of Recurly will be synced to Salesforce. So it's a great way for your sales team or your account management team to pull up an account record and view what their last invoice was, what subscription plan they're on. You can build all sorts of workflows. It's really, really fabulous. But I'm a Salesforce geek, so maybe you don't all feel the same way. We also integrate with MailChimp. Our MailChimp integration is great if you want to send more of those relationship type emails. Recurly can and will handle all of the transactional emails, receipts, subscription terminations, that sort of thing. But then you can use our MailChimp integration if you want to blast out emails based on trial ending or what plan they're on or whether or not they're past dues. So MailChimp allows you to target your customers for newsletters and that sort of thing on a much easier basis there. All right. So a question about, how difficult is it to implement the Recurly API onto your website to create accounts and subscriptions on the fly? It's very easy. What I recommend doing is creating a Recurly site. You can use Recurly's full functionality in sandbox mode for as long as you'd like. Take a look at our docs, run through it. It's very simple to get up and running using the Recurly API. I didn't build the Recurly API, but I hear all the time that the engineers who built it did a good job because it is quite easy for our merchants to get up and running. If you plan on using the Recurly Gateway, there are a couple merchant account providers I recommend. The first one is TSYS, and the reason why I recommend them is they actually handle the back-end processing of the Recurly Gateway, and so they are pretty good to our Recurly merchants. They waive your monthly fees. So you would get pretty good pricing with TSYS. Another bank I really like working with is Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has two merchant account reps in particular that are really phenomenal working with Recurly merchants. So give Wells Fargo Merchant Account Services is the full name, a call. And if you have any trouble connecting with them on a merchant bank account, just let me know and I can put you in touch with our contacts there. So when you're working with different integration methods like the API, it's really difficult to provide an estimate of dev time because you can do so many things. What I would tell you is that if you're doing a very basic, account creation, subscriptions, no fancy renewal dates, nothing like that, give it a couple of days. It's not too difficult, but it's all sort of a level of what features are you looking to implement, what your developer skill set is, what client library. So I'd recommend looking at the docs, playing around with the sandbox site, and then you can scope out within your own team and your own resources how long you think that integration might take. And if you have specific questions about what you're looking to integrate with and the level of difficulty, go ahead and give us a shout at support@recurly.com and we can help with that as well. So there are definitely more questions coming in, but I wanted to just point out two resources. The first one is this implementation guide. This is just really a list of, I believe, like 8 steps to go through. It goes into a little more than the 1, 2, 3 we covered here. Things to consider before you go live. The second one outlines our different integration paths. And if you're not sure whether the hosted payment pages or Recurly.js are right for you or even the API, take a look at this doc. It can help you decide. The other thing I'd love to mention is support@recurly.com. I know it's an email address, but you're going to get to know us very, very quickly and very, very personably. And this is always the best place to get in touch with us because we have people looking at it around the clock and fighting each other off to see who gets to answer a ticket first. So definitely after this webinar, stay in touch with us and let us know how we can help you. The other thing I'll mention is that our product roadmap is really determined by our users. So if there's something you'd like to see out of Recurly, let us know. I won't always be able to get it done, and I may tell you a flat out no, but we do log each and every single feature request that comes into Recurly. We meet every week with our product team to look at what people are looking for. So things that you're looking at will really help us decide where the business needs to grow. So your feedback is definitely important to us, and we want to hear it. Along that line, I can tell you that sales tax is going to be an officially supported feature very soon. We're in beta right now, US-based sales tax, and then we'll follow shortly with other tax regions. And then we're also working on some really exciting reporting. So lots of things are going to come to Recurly, especially this quarter. And I think you're going to see some very exciting announcements coming from us soon. And these have all been user-driven features that our customers have told us they wanted, and we have answered. All right, well, it looks like your questions have all died down, so I am going to wrap up this webinar. But again, I invite you, if you are going to end up this webinar and go out and try out Recurly, stay in touch with us. We're definitely here for you. We definitely want to make your onboarding very smooth and seamless, so just let us know how we can help. Thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon.